Well, I can't say I expected this type of news to drop this evening, but Canada is apparently, according to Donald Trump, seriously considering becoming the 51st state because the Iron Dome, or I guess the new version of the Iron Dome, the Golden Dome has a $61 billion price tag for Canada's portion. And all of that will be completely waived if Canada considers becoming the 51st state, which, according to POTUS himself, that is a real thing. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Also, Mark Carney sits down for an exclusive interview with the bald guy from CBC. And then there's also some other news. This is a crazy freaking news day. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I do want to encourage y'all to hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. It does really help grow the channel. Without further ado, let's get right into this. Starting off with the fact that BC is apparently expediting mining here in British Columbia, as per David Eby, the Premier's statements.
The Premier laid the groundwork today for a new era in the mining sector for one of the most remote regions in the province. David Eby wants to revolutionize the permitting process, and local First Nations are eager to get started. Our Penny Deflos was there.
Well-paying mining jobs have been a cornerstone of the economy in northern BC for decades, and there could soon be more.
Our province will be the economic engine of the new Canada that emerges from this moment of global instability.
In front of an audience of industry groups, business leaders, and First Nations, David Eby sketched out a plan to speed up approvals for mining projects.
Well, I like what the Premier's talking about, the economic development. We want to see the economic development for all, for BC.
These Indigenous leaders are pleased with Eby's vision.
This work has been happening for a long time, and I'm very grateful to see that, that the province has begun recognizing this.
Right now, communities in the Tahltan Band's territory are struggling with high costs for essentials and scant services.
We're asking to make our lives a little bit easier and to see the benefits from resource extraction in our territory. We've been left behind there as well. We've seen billions leave our territory, and we have very little to show on the ground.
It can take 12 years for a new mine to be approved in BC. These are the environmental assessment documents for one application by Seabridge Gold. The industry wants to hear more about the Premier's plans and has suggestions.
It's about reducing the roadblocks in the regulatory process, permitting various pieces of legislative requirements concurrently. There's many ways we can do this, protect the environment and protect First Nations rights.
One project, one review.
Eby seems to be on the same page, insisting extraction to meet global demand for the critical minerals in electronics and batteries will benefit British Columbians and Indigenous communities without sacrificing environmental safeguards.
It's a unifying vision to protect the air, land, and water while creating good jobs. My goal is to expedite that work so that business will move ahead with clarity. Nobody benefits from projects that are tied up in never-ending processes.
I would love to know what you guys think about that. Now we're taking a look at Pierre Poilievre, who's back in the news, who has some comments to make about the throne speech that took place earlier today. Let's see what the leader of the opposition has to say.
Before I begin, let me thank my deputy leader, Melissa Lanceman. We join today in thanking His Majesty for coming to Canada and delivering the throne speech, reinforcing our ancient British liberties, a parliamentary system that goes back 800 years, a system that has served Canada well and has been the foundation of what I love to call the Canadian promise, that anyone who works hard gets a great life in a nice, affordable house on a safe street. That's the promise that we as Conservatives ran to restore, and it's why we were able to get 2 million more votes and 24 more seats. We inspired a lot of people that we would fight for that Canadian promise and bring forward that hope. And we were looking for that promise and that hope in this speech today. We did see a lot of the right slogans and political talking points, but no clear plans to get it done. One slogan dealt with controlling government spending, but there were no specific savings to roll back the morbidly obese Liberal government's costs. We saw promises about getting things built, but no mention of oil and gas or pipelines. Pipelines are, of course, the thing we most need to build. Didn't get one mention. Nor did they mention getting rid of the anti-energy laws that have kept our resources in the ground. C-69, the no development law. C-48, the shipping ban. The energy cap. the electric vehicle mandate. All of these things were left out of the speech altogether. No specific plans to get anything done, even though, as the Prime Minister has said, we are in a crisis to break our dependence on the American economy. They mentioned crime, but refused to say that they would repeal the Liberal catch and release bail law, C-75, or the house arrest law, laws that have allowed rampant chaos and crime to overtake our once tranquil streets. No mention of overcoming the opioid crisis and replacing tax-funded drugs and legalization with treatment and recovery. No mention of real plans to get taxes under control by reducing the cost of government. So we're here to turn the government's talking points into real plans. We pledge to work with the government to repeal the anti-energy law, C-69, repeal the energy cap, the electric vehicle mandate, the offshore shipping ban. Let's get our pipelines building. Let's get our goods to markets other than the United States. We're here to propose cuts to bureaucracy, consultants, foreign aid, and corporate welfare so that we can bring down taxes, debt, and inflation. Let's repeal the catch and release laws so that we can restore safety to our streets. Let's invest in treatment and recovery to bring our loved ones home drug-free. In other words, let's replace the talking points with real plans to get it done. That is what Conservatives pledge to do. That is what Canadians voted for us to fight for, and that is what we will deliver.
I gotta say, it is still very bizarre seeing Pierre Poilievre be the spokesperson for the Conservative Party, but not be in attendance in question period or in Parliament, really. Like, it's going to take some getting used to. I hope they run the by-election sooner than later, because it's just kind of weird. And that's not me criticizing Pierre. It's not me bashing him in any sort of way. I want him to be in Parliament. I want him to partake in question period and be more of the front runner of the Conservative Party. But wow, he really needs a seat. And like, he needs it yesterday. Anyways, moving forward, before we do, I'd love to know what you guys think, first of all, of what he had to say about the King's speech. Next, we're taking a look at this very weird freaking sit-down that Vashi did with Kim Campbell, which is outrageous to even think that this is worthy of an interview. Because Kim Campbell, for those who may not know, she was prime minister for a microsecond as a default. She was the interim prime minister, kind of like how Carney just became the prime minister after Trudeau stepped down until an election happened. But Kim Campbell never won that election, so she was just given the prime ministerial job. So we don't really count her, but according to Vashi, she's a critical role in the Canadian prime ministerial books. Let's take a little sneak peek at that interview.
In the lead up to the King's delivery of the speech and his visit more largely, so much of what people were talking about was what would the message be to the United States. What do you think the message to Canadians today was?
Well, I think the message to Canadians is we have an old and respected identity. And we are an interesting country, and we have a French population. We have Indigenous people. We are a very interesting, diverse accumulation of communities and peoples that has made this very successful country. And the way we deal with it is very different from, for example, the way Americans do. And that we respect those differences, we celebrate them. The fact that everything was done in 2 languages, the fact that we had an Indigenous person who made a cultural presentation, the fact that our First Nations people were there in their magnificent headdresses and regalias and clothes. I mean, they're just absolutely beautiful. This is not something that you find, for example, in the United States or in many other countries. So it's an interesting reminder of what goes in to make the Canadian community, which sometimes means there's lots of conflict. It doesn't mean that we're all, singing Kumbaya all the time. And it's a challenge and makes it maybe more difficult to govern, but it makes it us. And I think today people were of a mood to celebrate it, and the throne speech recognized that. But what I thought was also interesting, and remember that King Charles has been here many times as Prince Charles and made lots of speeches that were his own. This was the government speech, and that's what the throne speech is. But it opened with a comment about the Prime Minister working with the President of the United States on issues relating to our economic relations and our security relations. And what that really said too is, irrespective of all the other things that are happening, the government recognizes that it has a job to do. And the United States is a very important neighbor and partner, and the government is committed to working with the American government on the issues related to our economy and our security. Now, how successful those relations will be, we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the Americans are going to do. But it is the intention, we're grown-ups. It's the intention of our government to continue to do what it always does, which is to interact responsibly and intelligently and in a friendly way with our neighbor. And that was the first thing that was kind of said of the speech, of the priority of the government.
All right, moving away from that, now we got to take a look at what the heck Donald Trump just said. So Trump, according to Canada Proud, said, post on Truth Social that Canada is considering the offer to become the 51st state. The actual post is right here. I told Canada, which very much wants to be part of our fabulous Golden Dome system, that it will cost $61 billion if they remain a separate but unequal nation. And it'll cost $0 if they become our cherished 51st state. They are considering the offer, which is posted by Benny Johnson. But more importantly, this is right on Donald Trump's actual Truth Social account. So it's crazy. I don't know if he's lying. I don't know if Carney's lying. I don't know what is really going on. But it's not that far-fetched to be ultra suspicious of Mark Carney, especially when the leader of the Bloc Québécois says this. Oh my goodness. Here we go.
Because the issue at the beginning of the campaign was the threat from Donald Trump. And in the speech, there's no such thing. It just vanished, disappeared.
And I feel like, and I've said this before, and I'll say it again, that liberals are going to start to get some form of a buyer's remorse when it comes to Mark Carney. I mean, he campaigned super hard on the fact that Donald Trump is this massive threat, and now he's been buddy-buddy with Trump. And then also, we're apparently seeing, the fact that we might become the 51st state or more integrated into the American economy or vice versa, which, don't get me wrong, I'm all aboard more integration. But the liberals that voted for Carney are not. And speaking of Carney, we're now going to take a look at this exclusive interview that Mark Carney did. So bizarre, man. This guy is he's literally worse than Justin Trudeau.
And it's time to reinforce those strengths and those freedoms.
How much progress do you think you've made since the Oval Office meeting with President Trump on resolving some of the issues around trade, in particular the sectoral tariffs?
Well, I would term it this way, since we're at historic moments, epoch-making, to quote the speech from the throne. So to be slightly Churchillian, it was the end of the beginning. The Oval Office was the end of the beginning, reestablishing sovereign-to-sovereign dialogue, much more constructive engagement on some of the big issues on both security and economics. We've had fairly intensive discussions since then. Minister LeBlanc, for example, and our ambassador were down for a number of meetings last week. Conversations continue. We've got more that we need to do before we're satisfied that we have a partnership that is in Canada's interest.
But how would you characterize it? I mean, have you moved closer? I mean, he's going to be in Canada on around the 15th of June for the G7. Yep. Could you have a deal by then, a deal by Canada Day, or does this sort of thing that moves into maybe, the CUSMA review time period, which Mexico is now saying could start in September?
I don't think it's in either of our nation's interests for it to drag out that long. I think the issues are getting a sharper relief. But we're going to take as much time as necessary to get the right deal for Canada, but no more.
Okay, but so do you agree with the Mexican economy minister, I think, said today, end of September is when CUSMA starts? Is that the period between now and then that you think you can have this resolved with the United States?
I have a slightly different view. I didn't see the specific comments, but the actual CUSMA review period starts in 2026. So, look, there are specific issues, the border, fentanyl, tariffs. Canada's made tremendous progress. We're securing our border. You heard the speech from the throne doing even more, another 1,000 border CBSA agents, border services agents, another 1,000 RCMP personnel, a series of other measures which will exhaust our interview time if I go through them, to secure the border. So we're making huge progress progress. The amount of fentanyl going across our border is down 90%. We're less than 0.1% of the U.S. Imports of that horrible drug. And the bigger issue now is northbound drugs and guns. So look, we've made a lot of progress. We think we should be moving off of those tariffs. The U.S. should be moving off those tariffs. We are stronger together in autos. The auto pact's been in place my entire life. I'm not that young anymore, so it just shows you the value of being together. Same with steel and aluminum and the other trade challenges. So we want to make direct progress on those issues before we have the broader review of USMCA.
On the relationship, though, overall, Prime Minister, I mean, there seems to have been progress on at least the task.
Without question, there is progress, David.
For sure, but on the recognition of
progress towards becoming the 51st state, perhaps.
Sovereignty, right? The president said he still likes the idea of the 51st state, but he's not going to talk about it. Ambassador Hoekstra has said
Yet he just did. Yet he just did again today, right after this interview aired. Insane timing.
NHL, David, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely fair. But he still talks about getting the auto sector, the president does. He still has the tariffs against the auto sector and talks about making it economically unviable to make cars in Canada and to move it to the United States. So the economic threat still persists.
One of the issues for the United States and by extension for Canada is, can the U.S. auto sector be viable and truly competitive versus Asian competition, particularly coming Chinese competition, but broader global competition? Can it be viable if it's just an American auto sector, U.S. auto sector? The answer is no. And Canadian, we have a great auto sector, great auto parts sector, and that integration of the auto sector is part of what will make North America competitive, and that's what we're working towards.
The line you said with
Trump will not allow it. President Trump won't allow us to start trading in the masses with European countries. He just won't. He'll view it as a security threat. He'll view it as a way that, that money and those auto parts or whatever it is that we're selling, we get in the hands of bad guys. America wants it all. And I can't really argue with that. I can't really argue. I think that we should be just trying to double down on our trade with America. And we should be trying to grow North America, not selling to European countries. I mean, we have to look after our own, and that's the western side of the world, specifically North America. And if you had to pick which one you pledge allegiance to, I pick North America. I don't think Carney, our prime minister, picks that. I think his allegiance is to different parts of Europe.
Some frequency during the election was he wants to break us so he can own us. Do you still believe that's true?
I think the president, I won't look into his soul, but I think the president is recognizing, as others are, just how strong and free Canada is. And so if you look at the speech from the throne today, as you did, this is about investing in Canada. This is about building Canada, about making one Canadian economy out of 13. It's about nation-building projects. Each of those and those together give us much, much more than could ever be taken away by trade action. This is a confident country moving forward, and it's an exciting time.
Look, I do want to go through some of the specific measures from the speech from the throne, but just one more on the United States, because when you said the process of deepening integration is over, is that a permanent state of affairs in your view? Is that something about the changing nature of America as a country, or is it specific to this period under President Trump?
Well, I'd roll back 40 years since we're looking at the broader sweep of history. Maybe even a little more, a steady process of integrating the auto sector, as I mentioned when I was first born, then moving to broader goods, services, financial services, even some people talking as little as a few years ago about having a customs union with the United States, greater freedom of movement of labor. That's not going to happen. That reliance, we are seeing the danger of over-reliance on the United States economically and also from a security perspective. So we will, as I said the other day, we will cooperate where necessary, when it's in both of our interests very clearly, but we won't necessarily cooperate. So we, as a confident country with an ambitious plan, we look outwards. We look to Europe. We look to Asia. We look to new partners that we're going to deepen with. And that's a big element of what we're laying out in the speech.
So when you look to Europe on the security and defense arrangements, is that to sort of augment the ones that exist with the United States or to reduce reduce the reliance there? Is it a hedge or
It's
a
to
replacement?
reduce the reliance.
Well, it's both. Diversification. Look, and I say it's both. I'm not trying to avoid the question or be clever. The point is, we need to do much more to secure our borders, to secure our Arctic, to secure Canada. So we're going to need to spend more. We recognize that. Now we're going to do it in a way that is in the best interest of Canada, with partners on which we can rely, get best value for money, but also make more of that investment here in Canada, so we're growing jobs and livelihoods in our own country. You know this. Some that may not have followed as closely. We're spending over 75 cents on every dollar of capital spend for defense goes to the United States.
Right.
That's not smart. What's better if we spend more at home, if we have diversified partnerships. Look, part of what's been happening in the last.
Or, now hear me out, if we have some sort of cooperation with America where they secure all of our land in a joint operation with Canada so that we become as impenetrable as what America land is, then that's really good. I was having this conversation with a friend of mine earlier today. I think that Canada is so vulnerable. There's reason to believe that one day we could become the next kind of Ukraine in terms of just being stomped on by Russia. We don't have any defenses in the north. We got Cold Lake. We got nothing on the west coast. They could have submarines or a fleet of planes fly in on the west coast, and we don't have anything. We have nothing. And the whole argumentative point of, oh, well, it's cold and no one wants to be up there. It's cold in Russia too. They're used to it, right? So when we talk about Canada's borders, it's not just protecting, from illegal weapons and drugs and stuff like that coming in from America or vice versa. It's also protecting from the future of being attacked, being Pearl Harbored, right? Canada is so vulnerable. We have one of the largest land masses in the world, yet the weakest defense. In fact, literally no defense at all. Our military would be too busy trying to figure out how to define what a woman is by the time we get Pearl Harbored. It's insane what's going on here. So yeah, we need to put money into our military, and we need to do it immediately. Or I'm not suggesting 51st state. I'm not denying it, but I'm not suggesting it. Or we have some form. I don't know what this even looks like. It's not my job to figure out the solutions. It's my responsibility on this YouTube channel, my self-imposed responsibility, to commentate on what politicians are putting forward. And I think that they're not doing enough. I think that we need to have a more integrated military with America. If they want to have Verizon phone plans in Canada, and if they want to have Schwab banks and Fidelity banks in Canada, so be it. There's Chinese banks in Canada. Who cares at this point? Bring in some more American stuff. Let's set up some more military bases on all of our coasts, get more of a military presence, and really start to be more of a superpower instead of this ultra progressive country with this insane amount of landmass, but unable to define what a woman is. It's just kind of weird. It's just kind of weird. Now, Carney doesn't seem as progressive as Justin Trudeau, which is a step in the right direction, but is it the step in the best direction? I don't know. I didn't vote for Carney. Those who did, I'm sure, are somewhat experiencing buyer's remorse right now because they're realizing, oh, well, he's not really doing the things that he said he would. He's not standing up to Trump at all, which, again, I think we should have more integration with America. So if Trump just wants to steamroll over Carney and acquire Canada, I mean, I'm not really going to criticize it. It is what it is. It is what it is. When we talk about the future of the world, I think that there's going to be two outcomes: Sharia law or Western culture. And if you had to pick one, which one would it be?